what we're really saying is that the part of what's going on is that you also have to process all that stuff that happened to you as a child, right? So think about this, right? I mean, again, I don't want to get you guys knocked off of your channel, but there are particular topics that show up around the child end of this that don't show up anywhere else in the programs, right? You have all the child sex trafficking. You've got clones being made of these kids. And the thing is, oh, by the way, a lot of these kids, I have a friend of mine, I've told this story before. He's a SEAL team commander. He actually was in Michigan. They did a retrieval up there. It was 123 kids. It made the news, made ABC News. And when they got there, he was actually out on the boat, first off, training with the Coast Guard in Lake Erie. JSOC calls him on the sat phone and says, "You're going to be taken off the boat and you're going to Michigan." Okay. They come back to shore. CH-53D picks them up, takes them to this place in Michigan. When they land, there's already FBI at both ends of this underground bunker. It's a warehouse. Now, here's the thing, right? When you're looking at a building and it has case steel fire and blast proof doors, that takes money.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. But these guys get there, and the FBI can't get in. They've been hitting it with bullets. They've been trying to, take it off the hinges, whatever. The door won't budge. And they asked the SEAL commander, said, "Can you guys make those doors go away?" And he asked one of his guys, who's an EOD guy. He says, "Can we do that?" And the guy's like, "Yep, we got that in the bag." And all of a sudden, the doors get blown off the hinges. And when they go in, they took those 8 guys inside this front office area. 6 of those 8 guys died. 2 were restrained. They were trying to keep them from getting to this back door that actually went into the main warehouse area. And inside that main warehouse area, they had suspended cages with 123 kids in it. Each kid's in a singular cage.
Wow.
And these kids have been tortured. They have been, all kinds of bad stuff. But the big thing that hit there was a certain chemical they've been extracting out of these kids. And they were storing it in these large 55-gallon drums that are shipping elsewhere.
Adrenochrome?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing, right? So a kid typically produces 6 to 8 ounces of adrenochrome over the course of their life, right? Think about this. And they've got 55-gallon drums of it.
Gosh, Jesus. I mean, and that's one tiny facility that they were able to break into. There's thousands probably. I mean, and that's just on Earth.
When I was talking to this guy via phone call, his comment to me was, he's like, "Will," he goes, "I've seen all kinds of crap, that I've seen in combat, I've seen in battle, I've seen all kinds of stuff." And he goes, "I still can't get that vision out of my head." He goes, "Us trying to get these kids out of this cage, and these kids, that's why they lived their entire life was inside this cage. They've never been outside that cage. Most of them are clones. They're not even on the record. None of them had any sort of SSNs. None of them had any sort of documentation or names. They're all tracked by a number. And the system they track these people in is the same system they use off planet called TAPSIS, which essentially is a slave tracking system, essentially, asset tracking system. And these kids have been put in the system. They were being tracked. They're being used. And it was completely off the books. No one knew who these people were, who these kids were. These kids were not really, quote unquote, missing, which means either another slave was bred to make these children, or they were cloned.
Wow.
But the idea is this is the negative aspect of cloning too, right? So when you have people using technology in ways that was never designed or meant to be used, this is what happens.
I've also heard you say that reptilians clone humans as meals, basically, or something along those lines. Like they just they clone people just because they eat us basically alive.
So we are considered a delicacy by the Draco. And one of the things we have to kind of understand is that part of what happens is some of these slaves will get partially eaten and then regenerated. And here's the thing, right? That memory's never wiped out of your head. Yeah. So this person's continually going through this process of regeneration and being eaten.
The level of technology involved here is humanity is just not, they will not be able to wrap their head around it. I mean, people like us, because we've been listening to you, we understand that it's out there, but we have no way, we don't know how it works. And then we've never seen it actually in action. We just hear about it. So even I think we would be shocked at some level with seeing it. That's where I think people are going to have the hardest time, is just not even that this stuff is happening, but the technology that they're using to accomplish all this stuff.
But the bottom line is, when you're done working in that program, whether you do 20 or, like in my case, you do 40, they have to reinsert you within 5 to 10 minutes of when they extracted you out of the original timeline, because that's when you start seeing this fluttering and the timeline effect. And some people, not really me, but some people might actually create a huge flutter, and that's where you start seeing these snapbacks happen later on in time. And people are like, well, what happened to this person? And the bottom line is that individual was probably abducted at some point and taken off the planet. And this is why we're seeing in the US, I mean, you look at the US, Canada, and the EU, the statistics alone last year were 1 million people went missing. So we can say a chunk of those individuals are definitely now off the planet. We know this because for those of us that have been in the programs, we've seen what the inside of a merchant marine galley looks like when they're bringing these individuals off the planet. That's how I was brought off planet. So, I mean, we know it happens.
Yeah, I just assume the people that go missing were probably being eaten by the certain groups of regressive races. Because I mean, if they're using the 20-year and back, they could keep their slave. Or also, they take people that die in like plane accidents, or like in Beirut when we saw that huge explosion. So a lot of those people could have been picked up. They could have stopped time momentarily and picked them all up. So so it's it would probably be more than just the missing people.
So I'm going to say this really quick, but I'm not going to stick necessarily on this topic for very long, because I know it does trigger people a little bit. Yes, there are races that do in fact actually like the taste of human flesh. And yes, there are certain groups within subsects of those species. For example, if you look at the Inguinoid sect, that was a subsect of the Draco, they specifically love human carcasses and flesh. And what I would say is, yes, when you're talking about this idea of removing somebody out right before a disaster occurs, that's absolutely possible. And even if you get like a minute DNA sample from that person, we all know what regen tanks can do. If you have a minute DNA sample in a good working regen tank, you can rebuild the whole body. All you need is essence to transfer in there to get a baseline operatable human being to walk out of that tank at some point. So,
all right. So moving on here, do some fast food restaurants put human meat in their meat? And are they cloning animals?
All of them is very short answer. All of them.
They're all putting humans in their burgers, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In their burgers.
Yep.
And does that affect the consciousness of people? Are they in some negative way?
Yes, people are more aggressive.
And
it's
so would that be any fast food chain that's owned by?
It's very easy. Once you are feeding dogs, it's very easy. Once you are feeding dogs with raw meat, they are aggressive. The same stuff with people. Nothing less, nothing more. Very easy peasy.
Wow, that's gross. So I mean, what are they cloning these humans underground bases and dumping them in some kind of pit or something to process them?
Yeah.
How are they getting the meat?
Into a pit, as you said.
Wow. And what about say like some defunct super soldiers? Do they take their bodies and throw them into the grinder too and feed them to us?
No,
like they did at Project Omega.
The super soldiers don't have regular meat.
Oh, what they eat special food?
Yeah.
Like what?
it's another complicated topic to talk about. Maybe another time. Maybe.
Okay, I'm assuming. Well, I visualize as some kind of femto injections.
Yes, you are not so far from
All
truth.
right.
You are not so far from truth.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to mention to the audience that be sure to check out the Heather material in the PDF that was released by Project Camelot. It talks a little bit about Project Omega, Omega 3, where they actually took some super soldiers that they didn't want to use because they found a new technology, and so they sent all these super soldier bodies and extracted the Omega 3 vitamins from the flesh, and then they sold that off. Merck Pharmaceuticals sold that off as the Omega 3 supplements. So pharmaceutical grade Omega 3 could very much likely be made from human flesh. Just want to let you know. So I guess the moral of the story is don't buy any Omega 3 from Merck Pharmaceuticals.
How about this question? Okay. Tell us about, do some of these ETs, is that one of the things they trade? Meat? Human?
Yes, there is quite a few species out in the universe who eat meat, and human is on the menu. I hate to say it, guys. I'm sorry. You're still not the top of the food chain. No one is. And unfortunately, humans breed a lot and a lot quicker, especially on Earth. So obviously, some of the dark Dracos obviously eat human. There are some like hybrid gray ET species that also eat human, and just like anything else, human can be on the menu anywhere in space, so you always want to know where your meat's coming from. I've actually been to several planets that actually have restaurants and stuff like that, and they also serve human as well.
Wow. Did they serve meat?
Yeah, absolutely. They kind of had to. Every species has their own physiology, food substance that they have to have. Like me, I have to eat meat. I wish that, they had more Henovian technology where nothing had to be killed to have the meat, because the DNA feedback is just absolutely atrocious. But some people have to have plants, different variants, nutrients.
Okay. Did you ever encounter any aliens that ate humans?
Absolutely. 100% absolutely. I've been eaten myself. Not that I eat human. It's more of I have been eaten by several entities, Dracos, Draconians. There's a couple insectoids out there that have no problem of eating humans as well. Some of the grays, gray body types, I should say. I just categorize them into a gray body type because they all have like almost the same structure, just with different variances.
Were any of these beings stationed with you on the Section 13 vessel?
No, usually it was more at like the Mars camps and either on the battlefield.
All right. And as far as the regeneration process, it takes place. So do you have any information on that? Like how would they say you just got eaten, how would they bring you back?
They can take what's left of you and throw you into a tank with various colored goo, and you start regenerating, and then they take your soul shard and shove you right back in.
Do you actually remember the process of them taking your soul and shoving you back into another clone body?
Multiple times. It is the most painful experience I've ever had, and I've been through a lot. So it literally, it feels kind of like you're going through a black hole and just getting, your quanta is just being shredded, and then of course you're being forced into one point.
So the Dark Fleet does fight with them some, and there's one really nasty gray species that I've heard other people call them the Matria or something. Mitra, like that. And I know that we clash with them in Dark Fleet.
I know they have a taste for human flesh.
Yeah.
Do they have a base on the moon too?
I think possibly. They have one on Mercury.
Okay.
They might have one on the moon.
What about you, Apollymi? Have you witnessed any collaboration or sharing or joint ventures in the programs?
Dude, they just tell us what we're going and where we're going to for the Section 13 stuff. And my other projects and stuff, yeah, we fight a lot of the people that we got hired by the day before. So there's a lot of fighting within the groups. It's ridiculous. On a emissary standpoint, though, a lot of it is them just fighting for resources, fighting for territory, fighting for just about anything that they could possibly get their hands on, and some of it's a little dirty play, but it's kind of ridiculous for me, in my standpoint.
Right. And since we're talking about ETs who like the taste of humans, you mentioned that you have been on a planet that had restaurants where they served human meat. And could you go just a little bit more into that?
Humans are just like anything else in the universe. They are not off the menu. I mean, even on this planet, they're not off the menu, which is weird.
So you had humans
Anyway.
going to restaurants?
Huh?
So you had humans cannibalizing in that restaurant?
I don't know if you can call it like super cannibalizing. I mean, everyone thinks like there's going to be the human parts in the back that just look weird. The stuff that was served was pretty much like ground beef. So like you wouldn't know it was human, because it like came in the form of like, steaks and stuff like that. So it wasn't like, here's an arm, but yes, there was humans that were served in the restaurants. I mean, but humans aren't the only species either. That you can get just about, if that restaurant is one that will serve other species, you can get other species too. It's
Right.
not just humans.
How many ICC self-sufficient colonies would you estimate are out there?
I have no idea. I couldn't honestly give you an answer to that because I don't know.
Right. And we also hear that they do a kind of unspeakable act. And I don't know if you can confirm this, ICC, that they capture the acid souls when they die on Earth, and then they rebody them for further use in space. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that for the ICC standpoint. I do know that the Dark Draco factions were doing that. Illegally, of course, because if they don't own any DNA contracts down here or soul contracts, then they don't have the right. Nobody has the right to collect souls except for like reapers and that sort of stuff. So for the reincarnation cycles and whatnot. The only time that anyone can collect a soul without going through the reincarnation cycle is by a soul contract. If your soul, I guess if you have like a star family or something and you're like, hey, when I die, my soul needs to come back to you guys, you sign it before you get here. There's a lot of illegal technology that has been used on Earth, and Earth has been looked at for the last 4 or 5 years by the higher councils that are governing the bigger councils of this universe, because there are things going on here that were never supposed to happen. And even though this is a starseed experimental planet, there are still rules that the governing seed councils who started the project have to go by source. So
I see. Yeah. And you also said that child trafficking rescue missions were happening at one point. And what faction did that, and what did one look like?
I cannot tell you what faction did those. That would be breaking my contracts and also putting them into the spotlight, which I don't want to do. What did it look like? Not good. I've been on several of the missions. I can't say by which factions, but I've been on entire motherships that have had not just children, but teenagers and adults and being shipped off to God knows where. And you know, my group and I had to go in and completely take out a good quarter of the crew and get these people out of there so that they can go to a better place. You know, some of them weren't even returned to Earth because some of them didn't even come from Earth. The human slave trade, they say humans, but there's more than humans that are actually being trafficked. There's other species as well. And these people can come from anywhere in the galaxy, not just Earth.
True, yes.
If you don't mind me asking, what species are also being trafficked? Stuff that's sentient as well?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you get animals from other planets being trafficked illegally, but more or less that we're more worried about humanoids. So, and when I mean humanoids, I mean like from avians to reptilians to amphibians to humanoid for, you know, you guys. So any of those and anything in between is what we would call human trafficking.
Well, what other planets, do you know the names of them offhand that these sentient humanoid beings are being plucked from? What solar systems?
It would even be so much planets. Planets do get raided occasionally, especially during times of war. I know the Dark Dracos were raiding nearby planets, and even some of their planets and moons that they had owned. They were just taking people to use them as cannon fodder, basically. So, you know, and each species has certain perks to their biology that can be favorable to some, you know, either for the hybrid programs or anything like that. So, I mean, it's not okay. None of it is okay. No one deserves to be taken from their families or their planets or anything like that. But we're talking, you know, ships getting intercepted and completely raided, and the people stripped and put into the slave trade programs as well. So just because it's on a planet doesn't mean it's safe either.
You're saying it's just the Dark Dracos that do this?
No, but the Dark Dracos are ones that I know for a fact that have been doing it. A lot of the ships that I ended up raiding for the last, well, I can't really give a time frame, that'd be breaking contracts, but have had them on there. And I've actually been part of the human slave trade as a kid as well. When Section 13 found me too unruly, they put me in a crate and shipped me to the Mars base, and there was human slave trading going on there. I've also been put on a planet that had like thousands of cages of teenagers and children and some adults as well.
What is this?
I don't know where that was. I have no clue. They knocked me out and I woke up in a cage over there.
A warehouse of just caged people?
No, it's not in a warehouse. It was like a desert area, and there was like huge like blanket tarps and stuff to cover some of them, and there was like boards and everything. Huh?
Like an open air prison?
Yeah, kind of. But it was just, it was kind of like this weird built-in walled area of all these cages lined up and stacked on each other, and then they had like boards that you would have to walk to go to some of the areas. It was very low maintenance, but they had draconian guards there and some other reptilian species as well. But you would see people come in, like point to the cages. They would bring the people out of the cages and the kids, and then they would put them in shackles and then just walk off. So I managed to end up breaking out of there with a few other people, and then I just used one of my teleports for opening portals to get the heck out of there, because I wasn't looking back at all.
So what races, and of course we all know there's reptilians, but what races eat humans and what races keep humans as pets?
Sorry, this is the first one I was laughing at.
Oh, I don't care.
Any race can eat a human. Humans eat humans. So it really depends on the person. And you can actually find human meat at certain restaurants out in space, and other ET species as well.
What's the name of the most predominant restaurant? Like, what's the equivalent of Ruth Chris out there?
I don't know the names of them. I don't know the names of them. I know you can find some in the Draco constellation, the Orion constellation, the Pleiades. what was that other place that I was at?
Get some
I
like
don't
human
remember.
flambe. Yeah. You like human with that? Yeah. Okay.